Welcome back to the Mindfully Gay podcast. In our last episode, you heard the coming out stories of Nick and John. Now it's time to hear from Jerry. Listen to how Jerry unveiled his truth. Perhaps it will inspire you.
So what's your...
Tell us, Jerry.
What's everything about...
So back to the 1800s.
Is this in Middle English? That you're going to tell us that story?
Long time ago. So, I was thinking about this earlier in the week. I knew when I was gay. I definitely knew I was gay in the 6th grade. Our little school would do this, like this week-long camp. Mm-hmm. So we would go and be in these dormitories, and our teacher, which I had a male teacher that I kind of had a crush on, but I didn't think that was gay. I just thought I really liked Mr. Francis.
Right. How old were you? 6th grade. How old were you?
6th grade, so
That's
maybe
12,
11 or 12.
12
yeah.
Okay.
And we had to shower in the...
Ah,
Those days, it was like the shower.
The pit.
And it's like, I've never been naked before, but my little friend, David, just dashed across the dorm, butt-ass naked. And I thought, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It registered.
And the minute it registered,
Yeah.
it also registered this layer of fear.
Yeah. Wow.
Because could my little body be naked around those bodies and behave itself? Right? Because at that age, right,
Yeah.
you know, the wind blows.
Yeah, things are
And then
blossom.
I saw Mr. Francis naked.
Wow.
Changed the whole 6th grade for me.
God, I'm sure.
Got it.
But here's the thing. At the same time, I grew up in this, my mother's side of the family is Italian, and I had an aunt who came out. She left her marriage,
Wow.
and she came out as a lesbian.
Wow.
And this created a trauma effect in our family, like the extended family. My grandmother, who is from Sicily, like lost her shit. And I do remember one particular time where my mother said, I don't ever want you to be alone with Aunt Jeanette.
Mm.
And then Aunt Jeanette got involved with this woman, Gloria. And it just like, even though people were polite, there was this, can't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you grew up with.
And
Yeah.
so I knew I was attracted to guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I knew it was bad. And it was wrong. And then there was also another layer of, even though my family was Mormon, we certainly weren't like the poster card version of Mormon. But there was that layer of religion, the religious trauma that just said, at that time, there's just no space. And so I really wanted to go to college. My family generationally just worked the factories in Detroit, Michigan. And I knew that wasn't going to work for me very well. I wanted to go to college, so I wanted to go into the military. So I went into the military in 1982. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that was before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was, you're not allowed in.
Right.
And even though I had never been sexual with anyone, when they interviewed you, there was a very specific question. Are you or have you ever engaged in homosexual behavior?
Wow.
And I just remember saying, just no.
Mm-hmm.
And in the military, so I was 18 in the military, I certainly was surrounded by some very beautiful men in very intimate kinds of situations. And it was just always really awkward. I was kind of perceived as the mama's boy because I was into theater. I was into things that were safe in high school. So I was in the military. I wasn't like the butchest example out there. And certainly a lot of the language and a lot of the conversation, everything was anti-gay and everything was just kind of, you know, you weren't man enough, you were gay and all that stuff. So, you know, I think it's interesting. That's when I got way involved in Mormonism. And one of the burdens that I kind of carried in my head was everyone thought I was this deep example of Mormonism. Right? They were just like so like, oh, look at Brother Bowie is just so outstanding as a young man, and he keeps the word of chastity and or the law of chastity. It's like, yeah, I can touch on that.
Wow.
And in the back of my mind was this, as much as they applauded me and held me up to the standard, I just always thought, if you only knew.
Yeah. Oh my God.
If you only knew. If you only knew how badly I want to go to priesthood meeting. No, if you only knew, right?
Exactly.
And so that was just this constant turmoil I was in. And it's interesting, some of the missionaries who had worked with me, I think they knew that I was in this place of turmoil because they would always give me this pamphlet that Elder Boyd K. Packer had written for young men only.
Wow.
And any narrative in the church at this time was about how gay was bad, it would be better off to be dead than to be gay.
Wow.
Sins next to murder, unnatural sins, sins against nature, that's what it was, and miracle of forgiveness. And it just was just this constant loathing within. And so when I got out of the military, when I was in the military, I was so conflicted about this. And I had read somewhere that there was nothing that couldn't be resolved through fasting. And I thought, I'm going to beat this.
Yeah.
Prayer and fasting.
And
Prayer
so
and
I
fasting.
literally stopped eating for like a 3-year period.
Wow.
And what happened, so today I'm about 205 pounds, 5'11", 205 pounds. And when I discharged from the military, I weighed 123 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And what happened is, towards the final part of my enlistment, I started passing out at work. And nobody could understand why I was passing out. And I was just committed. I was not going to break this fast. Wow. And so when I discharged, I wanted to go on a mission. They wouldn't let me go on a mission because you're too skinny. You're passing out. Something's wrong with you. So I thought, okay, I'll start eating. So I started eating again, and they let me go on a mission. And I became this incredibly dogmatic missionary. Again, I was just going to beat the narrative. Like, I could cure this. And there would always be these kind of interesting experiences with some of my missionary companions and even in the military. And there were so many opportunities I could have crossed the threshold, to be honest. But I just wouldn't do it because the core belief was that I was a sin to be resolved. And so I did my mission. I drove my mission companions crazy because I was obsessed with being the best missionary as I could. That made them crazy. But I was very effective at what I did as a missionary. I came home, and what's the next thing you do? You get married. And so I went home to Oklahoma. I went home to Michigan, then to Oklahoma City, where I was in the military. There I raised enough money. I went to BYU. And the idea of going to BYU was I needed to find a wife. And of course I was a little bit older, not terribly older, but I was a little bit older and returned missionary, and why aren't you married? And there was a lot of energy and effort by those around me to help me find someone to get married to. And I met this woman who is an incredible person, and she was then, and she still is. And we started dating. And on the Kinsey scale, I'm just like my own category. I'm just like, no interest. Like, just none. So, when she's wanting to kiss and make out and do all these intimate things, I'm just like, we have to be righteous.
Right.
And of course, her programming as a woman in the Mormon church is, you don't question the priesthood. And not that I was consciously manipulating that, but I just couldn't go there with her.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get married, and I felt like I could get married to her, and I felt like we could have a good life together, and we did. And it was hard. I just remember on my honeymoon night thinking that was my first sexual experience of any kind.
Wow.
And all I thought was, well, I should back up. I actually told my bishop and stake president at the interview to get married. I think I'm gay. Like, I don't think it's there. And their question was, have you ever been sexual with anyone? No. Well, don't worry about it. When you get married, when you have sex,
It'll pass.
Yeah, exactly. They both said that, and they were really. I was so worried about it, and their agenda was that I get married, and it's so interesting to me. It's almost like my wife became the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
And you know, it wasn't like she wasn't competent or capable as a sexual being. I just said I couldn't reciprocate. And as our marriage grew, like it got to the point where I kind of want my side of the bed and you have your side of the bed, and she would never like confront me directly, but I could hear her crying in the bathroom, right? Like her sexual self-esteem was under attack, and at some point, I just thought it occurred to me I'm not the only one being hurt here. And so I finally came out to her, and it was, you know, it was huge. Her whole life agenda was to do what the church wanted her to do, and she lived her life for that goal, and I obviously threw a wrench into it. And we had a daughter, and the other thing that went through my mind is I thought, I don't want my daughter to grow up in this like vacuum of emotion, right? Like I wanted my daughter to know and grow up in a home where there was authentic, true love. And although I loved my wife, I loved her like a sister and as a friend, and it wasn't like I could be in love with her. And how parents demonstrate intimacy is so crucial to how kids understand intimacy. And so I came out to her. It was kind of devastating. And we thought, let's try to make this work. And we did. We put the effort into it. And just the dogma at church was just so amplified in my head, you know, and I was so disillusioned by the callousness of how they would talk about these topics. And it just became really clear that I couldn't do the church thing, and I wasn't doing a very good thing at the marriage. And we both kind of consented to the idea of, okay, we need to separate. And that's kind of how I came out. It was, I didn't really care how many parents thought about it. They weren't terribly intimate people in my lives, and they weren't very invested. It was devastating for my ex-wife, and that was hard for me because I felt this layer of responsibility. But at some point I realized this gives her an opportunity to have the life she wants, and I need to have the life that I want. But you know, it took a long time, even after we separated, before I ever allowed myself to get involved with someone, because I had so many layers around gay sex being bad and wrong that and actually my very first kind of boyfriend, I remember the very first time I had sex, I was like, this guy was sitting like this with me, and I kind of knew what was going to happen. As much as I wanted it to happen, I was terrified. And I was literally shaking. He's like, are you okay? Like, are you sick or something? And I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, please touch me. But
I'm into this. I'm really into
this. But he, you know, thank good. You know, I think sometimes we create these interesting, you know, I'm going to take the virgin kind of a thing. But this guy was actually quite sweet and patient. He actually talked to me about like how to do it, how to open myself up, how to like pleasure myself while something else was happening, and things that I had never even thought about, because I don't even think I'd seen even gay porn at that time. And I always think, thank goodness I got introduced to somebody who was willing to see that fragile moment and to kind of walk me through it.
Absolutely.
And then, watch out, man.
What's fascinating to me, Jerry, is like, you know, these, like you said, these layers, of starting at, sixth grade. I want to come back to that sixth grade, and just these layers of this is wrong, this is bad, I got to change this, and just finding ways that are going to, help you, not be this thing, right? With school, military, marriage, religion, all of that, all these layers, and then well, I guess several questions like, what did you do, or did you have to? How did you break through those layers? How did you break through all those layers to get to you? But I want to go in answering that. If you can answer that, what I was fascinated by was that sixth grade kid, that 11 or 12-year-old kid, going to that camp and seeing those naked boys in that shower and having a feeling, knowing that was the moment that you knew that I'm different. And then
fear.
And then fear.
Yeah.
Like what were the conditions that even got you to that point?
To the fear?
Yes. I mean, here's this 11-year-old kid. I mean, why didn't it go like, oh, naked boys, cool,
great,
fun?
Yeah.
Why did it go to fear? Like, what already was instilled?
Yeah.
What were the layers already
Yeah.
put down
Yeah.
to that point, and then continue to, put those layers
And
on?
create that if you only knew part in you. That
Yeah. Well, if you guys had to remember, I'm 64, born in 64, not 64. Right? What year were you born?
69.
Yeah. So that 5 years may not seem like much, and yet I think in gay years and in the whole civil rights movement thing, if you think about in 1964 was the first documentary that Chris Wallace did about the homosexual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in black and white, and everyone's face is in black, like that's shadowed out, so you can't see.
Yeah.
And the voice is described.
Yeah.
My name is George, and I'm a gay man, and right,
Yeah.
like it's this shroud of secrecy, and so when you're kind of growing up under that template of, at that time, the popular stereotype is gay men were pedophiles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right.
Right? And my little boy brain was hearing that and digesting it and assuming it and believing it without questioning
Without
it.
question, yeah.
And then when my aunt came out, which would have been when I was about 10,
Okay.
right? And there was anger and there was hostility
And there was instruction that you were not to spend time with her alone.
and that was only a year or two after Stonewall.
Wow.
Right? And so Stonewall threw the gay agenda on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Whether people saw it on the news or whatever, or were just kind of seeing bits and pieces of it. And again, I didn't completely understand it. It was a form of domestication where you just didn't question that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember in 82, I tell people this frequently, in 1982 is when HIV and AIDS was like big.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how people were getting HIV. And I remember thinking, I'm going to get this cancer and people are going to know that I'm gay. Not that I could die from it,
Right.
but that people would know
Yeah.
I was going to be gay.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think I had the same thought.
Yeah.
I think I had the same thought.
And so just being domesticated in that, and then it's sixth grade realizing, oh, there's something wrong with me. I find little David Shaw sexy, right? Or I want him in some way. Or I had this crush on my teacher that I knew was more than just admiration, but it was just like his body. I used to deliver papers in my neighborhood. And some guys would there were guys I thought, when I couldn't wait to collect. We'd come to the door and say, collect.
Yeah.
And they would hand you money and they'd come without their shirts on. I was like,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
loved it as much as I was like terrified of it.
Terrified of it.
Of getting caught.
And then of course all the gay
Found out.
bashing, everyone knew about gay bashing. back
Sure.
then.
Yeah.
So those were all those narratives. And
Yeah.
then when religion got layered into it,
Mm.
then it's like, God doesn't even like me.
Oh, yeah. Goodness.
And the only way to get this right is to be heterosexual and compliant. And my lack of heterosexuality was due to lack of trying.
It's to starve yourself to try to get it to work. You know, I have to just say, like, just stepping back, listening to both of your stories, and the difference in that, hearing yours, I have to say, it's not envy, but I hear it and I just think, God, I just wish that were me. I wish that was my high school. I wish that was it, because I've looked back and I fantasized about how it could be. Like, I've talked about the athleticism, want to play every sport, but I didn't, and all that crap. But then so looking, hearing your story, and think, I just wish that's how it went. And then I have to be very, I could have very well gone down that exact path with the church. I was ready. I was almost going to go on a mission. I was going to have to get married to a woman. I was going to probably go, of course, I'm military. I'm so grateful that I avoided that I applied to once. My high school counselor was alumni from Boston University. He probably knew I was gay. He was supporting me in getting out to the East, because there was nobody else in my school was applying to anything other than Weber College or BYU. and thank God, or whatever, that I got accepted to BU, because it's when I left that I didn't have to starve myself. I didn't have to change myself, because all of a sudden there's a newspaper for gay, and there's tons of gay around, and it just changed. It was such a change in trajectory for me that I appreciate the story so much, because in some ways I feel like that's where I could have gone, and it makes me more grateful for the reality of what I went through.
Yeah. I think even though when I left the church and was kind of marching to my own tune for a minute, for me, the paradigm shift was when I met these Native elders who said, well, this is how our culture looked at it.
No kidding.
And when they talked about the gifted and the spiritually attuned, because I remember telling my therapist at one point when I was trying to figure out to leave the church, that I'm just a spiritual person. Like, that is me. And I can't imagine what I would be without Mormonism, because it was a great vehicle to be spiritually driven.
Sure.
And I had served my mission in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, so I had been around the Native stuff. And I remember telling my therapist, saying, I think those Native Americans have something that might be worth understanding. But I never really pursued it, but it found me. And when I heard about this, I became somewhat obsessed about reading about it, studying it. And of course, then I got to meet Native people who were carrying those traditions. And that's what opened the door. But it was, I had to release my dogmatic attachment to this one thing. And I had to radically release and let go and try something new. And every time I tried something new, I thought, this just doesn't fit. But then if I would sit with it and just gave myself permission to let go of the old stories, I found that it opened me up in my heart. It opened up my mind. And again, I just think the mentoring that came from these elders was critical, because I think they understood that history, and so they created a space where I could explore and even express my doubts, which you don't do in Mormonism.
Yeah.
I remember saying, "This is crazy. This is, what do you mean we're going to get into this hot thing and do this hot thing?" And they're like, just try it.
Amazing that your mission took you to them. That's amazing.
Yeah, I never
realized
participated, but I was. I would often listen to these, because we talked to some interesting people on the reservation, And they never judged us for what we were bringing, but they were very settled in what they had to share with us. And I would find myself like,
Right, leaning in, right?
never heard this before.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Wow, I didn't know that part of your story.
Yeah.
That's where you did your mission, and that was probably just, here we go. Here's
Spirit laying out some
yeah,
breadcrumbs.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And yeah, so
That's fascinating.
I think, I can speak to this place about people who are married or trapped in these marriages, because I don't think everyone who's gay has to leave. If they've married heterosexually, I don't believe they have to leave those marriages. I did. And partly what drove me was I needed to feel like I was in compliance with something that felt authentic and real for me.
Right.
But I think, like when I work with clients and people that I know, I think, what would happen if we just stopped and listened to people and just gave them the chance to really self-determine what is in my best interest? And sometimes I get frustrated in the gay community because they're like, oh, well, we know what they're doing on this. We project these really interesting stories that I don't think are very helpful. And I think we could certainly be in more loving capacity to just let people self-determine the kind of life that they want to have.
Yeah.
And hold space for that.
Hold space for that.
I love that. That the self-determination. That's
like that.
I to stop playing that video that needs editing or voiceovers or whatever. It's just to slow down and ask yourself what it is that you want in life. Like you knew you had this spirituality in you that was being somewhat quenched with Mormonism, but you knew that it needed to. You knew that you needed to leave that church, but that you still had that need in you, and that is so much of what's defined you and the direction of your existence and how you've gone. And that was you getting to a place of contemplation like that, of deciding what it is that you want, not what you've been taught that you're supposed to do. And it's that's huge.
I think there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not spiritual. And I think, to me, spirituality isn't about attachment to dogma or principle even. I think, to me, spirituality is finding your unique alignment with what works. And so all three of us have very different lives. And all three of us can make whatever adjustments we need to. If we're just trying to find that alignment and that groove, I think then we'll find that connection to spirit. You may not call it spirit. I'll talk to clients who like, I don't have any spirituality, but when I'm outdoors, I find that sense of peace. I'm like,
That's it.
okay,
That's
I can call that spirituality.
Yeah, right.
And that's what it is for me.
Right.
I like to do it in Africa under the... No. But, yeah. And I don't know why we're even on that tangent, but authenticity, I think, is the key. And it's hard to get there. And what's interesting is when I was going through that experience, it was hell. Frankly, in that story, I think I had 2 attempts of suicide and was definitely suicidal during multiple places of that. And I put that out there because I want people to understand it was difficult. And I was very deliberate about, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to... I believe and now I look back at that time in my life, and it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. I look back at that time in my life and I think, like I wouldn't trade it. I have a daughter. I have 3 grandkids.
Right.
I have a husband who's been through a lot of this in terms of the family dynamics and our relationship. Like, everything that I have today is an echo of what I went through. And so I hold that space in my life with reverence. I'm not angry at Mormonism. I actually kind of feel sorry for them again. they did launch me in a particular direction, just think about things at a spiritual level. And they got me here when I was down here. They did get me here. Now I'm like way up here, and I look back at that and I think, well, that was part of the stepping stone. That got me to where I am. And I can only hold that in a place of gratitude.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. It's so affirming. So affirming that, because I feel the same way where, I've certainly had my lows, but I wouldn't change it. Because I don't think I'd be who I am now without that experience, those experiences. And so I'm grateful for them. And I think even in my 20s, maybe in my late 20s, early 30s, but I would say probably my 20s, there was a point where I was able to say with full confidence, I am so glad I'm gay. I am so glad that I am gay. I don't think I would want to be straight.
Look at your decor options.
I just stepped right into that because it was just this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be, and I couldn't imagine it any different.
I admire that deeply from both of you. I think it's, like I've kind of explained, I still do what ifs. I still play it back and I think, oh, if I could have just been this different or this, how this would have been more enjoyable, or, scholarships, who knows? I don't know. I still kind of get stuck in it, and you've mentioned that to feel sorry for them part, and that's hard for me too. I'm still with that bag of look what they did to me, and I know I've got to work on it, but I know I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to say thank God. I am happy that I'm gay. I'm happily gay right now. I don't know if I can say that I'm I don't know. I'm glad to have these conversations and to hear these things from you both, because it is deeply helpful for me, because it's just not options that I've thought about, I've thought about going or being in. I just keep replaying these stupid things that are just angry, make me angry with my bag of angry all the time. And I don't know, the church issue is hard for me, Jerry. I've got so much family in it, and I find myself just not doing anything with them, because how can I be around people that continue to pay money to that church and indoctrinate their children in it? Because I lost two kids in high school. I graduated with 46 and they killed themselves. I tried killing myself when I was 12. It's hard to just get to a place of I'm so happy that I'm gay, and that was what I was supposed to go through, and feeling sorry for the church, because it's such a powerful thing that continues to make people feel crummy about themselves, second-class citizens, not going to get into the Lord's kingdom, and I'm going to prevent, in fact, because I've chosen to be this way, I'm going to prevent my whole family from getting in.
But I want to say something. You weren't supposed to go through that. I'm not suggesting that you're supposed to be tortured.
No, I know.
Like I said in the thing on Instagram. But
to look at it and be grateful for
no,
it.
You don't have to be grateful, but can I find purpose? Can I find meaning in it? Can I kind of find the emotional tattoo of where it's brought me? It doesn't mean, right, that it's trauma. It is, it embeds in us. The question is, what will I do with it?
What will I do with it now?
Yeah. And so please don't hear me saying that this was somehow predestined prescription for you to go
understood. Yeah, no, I understand that part. What to do with it.
And that is hard work. And the reason I'm going to say it's hard work is we're not a culture. It's even got, I'm a therapist. I'm just so alarmed at how trauma oriented everything is. Like, we're so invested in the narrative around trauma that we've neglected this other narrative about recovery and reinstituting. And we can remember something or we can remember it.
Yeah. That's that reframing.
That's work. That's an editing work. But no, I
we're in our community, again, we're creating it, but where in our community do we create that opportunity in that cauldron to get into those narratives? Like, we'll show up at the white parties and the black parties and the blue parties and whatever, right?
There's no time for talk.
Right, and is there any question about why alcoholism is rampant in our community? Why drug use is rampant? Like, all the vices there are to anesthetize us from feeling anything is so rampant in our community. And I think in the grand design things, the deep state is let's keep those queers disassociated from their true power. Because when we step into it, we become a force. Right? We are the essence of magic. We are the essence of this deep substance. And yet we have to somehow be willing to, we have to do the work. We have to gauge that process to get to that place. And, Harry Hay used to start the Radical Fairies movement, and he used to say in later years that he felt like Moses, that he wasn't sure he would ever see his people to the promised land. But that's what he was suggesting is get gay men together, get queer men together to explore the stories of who and what they are. And when they get there, right, then they kind of watch the magic unfold. And I believe what he was talking about. And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But those of us that he spent time with can carry that message. And so maybe we are the generation and the tools.
That's it.
And maybe our wounding becomes the vehicle to create the stage for the work.
Absolutely, because there are going to be people out there who can relate to our individual stories or relate exactly to what you're feeling and experiencing, Nick, and say, that's me, and there's that. Then there's a connection. Then there's a bond.
Yeah. So we show up instead of just being the happy stereotypical gays, right? Let's show up and let's be vulnerable. Let's be raw. Let's be real, and see what we can do with it.
As we bring this episode to a close, we want to thank you for joining us on Mindfully Gay for Unveiling Our Truths, the Coming Out Stories of Mindfully Gay, Part 2. Jerry's story today was not just a personal narrative. It's a testament to the strength and magic that comes when we, as a gay community, step into our true identity. Our journeys with their challenges and triumphs remind us how powerful and transformative self-acceptance can be. We're a true force when we embrace our authentic selves and share our stories with the world. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at mindfully_gay for more insights and updates. And make sure to visit our website, mindfullygay.com, to learn more about our upcoming free social events. We'd love to connect with you there. Once again, thank you for being with us today. Your support and engagement make our community stronger and more vibrant. Until next time, keep embracing your journey and your magic.